King of Cups.
Hey everyone, we're back again with another episode of King of Cups. And this one is something that I've been looking at kind of on the side by myself for a while. And I started talking to our guest today, Slick Dissident Gabe. And he was kind of looking at a similar area, and we decided just to put our two minds together. And this whole episode is like this nostalgic trip. And what does nostalgia mean in today's environment, and how has it controlled us? How has it manipulated us? How has it put us into this present moment? Which is an interesting thing to say. How does nostalgia, something in the past, put us in the present moment? And so, welcome, Gabe, to King of Cups.
Thank you, Kris. It's a joy to be here. I'm super excited for this project. I've been counting the days for this one, man. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. And it's very serendipitous because my my last episode was over the Super Mario Brothers, which in itself has a whole nostalgic thing. And so I was just thinking about it as everything's all kind of lining up. And I think to preface this for myself, I would like to bring up something that I have enjoyed looking at, and that is the three weavers, or the three crones. They are the past, present, and future, and they are the deities that control our fate, will, and destiny. And I read this book for Weaving Spiders Welcome. I read a couple of chapters during the flow states. It's called Weaving Fate, Hypersigils, and Telling True Lies by Aidan Watcher. It's a very fascinating book. And it's all about magic and kind of flowing with your own energy, and these esoteric ideas, and these more mystical ideas. and he works with the reason why his book is called Weaving Fate is because he works with the three sisters, three weavers, three crones. He works with these energies, these entities, and that's how he performs magic. And in the book, what I found fascinating is he says that depending on, maybe your gray area, something that is you unable to complete, unable to do, it's a sign that these three figures, they're out of balance, they're out of conflict, they're not working together. So if one of them is too strong and one of them is too weak or whatever, and overpowering the others, and then it's going to affect you in a certain way. And maybe that is through, um, you know, you're not happy in the present moment because they're out of whack. So maybe another one gets too strong, and maybe that's why. And this is where kind of my mindset comes into. That's why people who are unhappy, possibly in the present, look to and fall for the nostalgic dopamine trip. It's because these three figures are out of balance. And I guess my first question for Gabe here is, with all this, these talking about these three figures being out of balance, it also kind of makes me think of checks and balances, you know, in our government system. You have the checks and balances. Is out of everything that I'm kind of laying out there, is there do you see any connection maybe between checks and balances as well? I know you look at things like that quite often.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so there are many cultures with different names for the three fates. Some people call them I like to call them the moire. I just love that word. It's a beautiful word. Some people call them the hores. There are all these, different lenses to look at them, and they have different names in each context. The Romans called them one thing. I come at it from like a Greek bend, and so they would be Clotho, Atropos, and Lachesis. And I like those three particularly because their symbols are very prominent. But I'll point out, like you said, checks and balances, and the government. Well, we have a three branch government system, one of which is called the legislation. The legislation. It literally has the name of one of the fates in the. Pretty sure that's I don't know if that's the Senate or the House of Representatives, but they literally use her name. And one of her symbols is a scroll. She's often carrying either a scroll or sometimes a globe or an orb. So they definitely know about this system, this Holy Trinity. And you're quite correct that every individual has their own landscape of focus, either to be very future oriented. Some people get kind of stuck in the past, and you can even, like, I love how you said that, you get that dopamine fix. And some people get a dopamine fix from planning, and they look forward so much that they're, I guess, their full range of the experience with the fates can be out of balance and out of whack. And I like to be like kind of in the present moment, in the now, as much as possible. And that's where I find a balance, to not be too swayed either way. And something in my project, I've talked about the fates before, and I'm still kind of undecided as to which one of the fates is the past and which is the present and which is the future. The way I've laid it out personally, the way I see it, it does not agree with Plato's Republic, the way that he puts it. I think of Clotho, the youngest one. She's the weaver. I think of her as the future. And the eldest one, Atropos, she has the scissors. Uh, and I think of her as the past because it's unaltering. It can't be changed. It's solidified. It's locked in place, and it's the oldest. The past is the oldest. And then Lachesis, I think of her as the present moment, as the here and the now. Um, but that's not how Plato's Republic lays it out. They've got it kind of rearranged in another way. So I just wanted to put that forward that I kind of relate to the fates in my way, but Plato's Republic will tell you something different, and there might be that's for everybody to kind of come to terms with in your own psyche. But yeah, so yeah, Lachesis is my favorite. I think she's the most eloquent of them. She has a globe in her hand, and a lot of people are like, conspiracy. But it's not. The globe doesn't necessarily mean the planet Earth. In fact, a globe makes a very beautiful star map. And my favorite star map that I have is it's a sphere. And so through the imagery on the sphere, the spherical star map, I get a really solid orientation of the stars of the heavens, which I think are a reflection of the psyche of the minds of man and ladies.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. So before we get too deep into the meat of our conversation, let's lay out some examples of nostalgia. Right now, we're getting a lot of like the 80s and 90s, it seems like. That's being kind of pushed by the media and everything. And the one that has fascinated me the most, I guess you could say, presently, is the liquid mercury trend of the 90s, and even going into that, it even got pushed into Y2K, which is interesting because that's when we got put onto a Y2K. That was when we got put into kind of a new paradigm. Like everything changed after that. And so they really wanted us to focus in prior to that in the 90s, this idea of liquid mercury. Of course, you got Terminator 2, the I forget what iteration of the Terminator that one was that liquefied itself. You had that. There was also a show on Nickelodeon called The Adventures of Alex Mack. And her whole thing was she was a teenage girl who was walking to school one day, and this toxic waste fell into the street and it got all over her, and she got powers, and her power was she could turn into a liquid blob. And the effect they used for her power was this liquid mercury power.
Wow.
And it was so big. It was, at the time, it was one of Nickelodeon's best rated shows. It was one of the most viewed, and we were getting a bunch of nostalgic trips and things about Alex Mack right now. I know myself and our mutual friend AlanMarcus.com, we both collect movies and stuff, and like VHSs, and there's a bunch of people bringing out like the Alex Mack stuff, and like the old Nickelodeon like orange VHS, and like here's Alex Mack, and so you have all that. And I was looking at liquid mercury, And then it hit me. It goes on before the 90s because he also had um it in as as early as like the 1950s space, like the sci-fi, like the 50s sci-fi. A lot of their stuff was that silver, because that's also where we get Capri Sun, which Capri Sun is in the space pouch. And so anytime they want to bring us to a new, I guess you could say a new level of whatever, they want us to think of one of the most mutable substances, and that is liquid mercury. So whether if it was the space race of the 50s, or I'm sure there was an example of the 80s that it being shown in the 80s that is slipping my mind. Well, I
Well,
guess you could also think of Back to the Future would be a
yep,
good example.
yep.
Um, they had the like the clothes, like there was so much silver, and that uh, um what I guess you could say that liquid mercury's substance kind of aesthetic in it.
Uh-huh.
And you had it in the 90s, you had it in Y2K, so it's so fascinating. And I'm trying to think about when they started rolling out um all the 5G towers. Was there anything in particular? I couldn't find anything. I would be interesting to know if you caught something, Gabe. Was there
Yeah,
any
man.
liquid mercury being pushed around the time 5G towers started being put up?
Well, nothing's coming to mind on the 5G towers, but I gotta put forward that Mercury on the periodic table is number 80. And we're talking about the 80s. And I always love, and Mercury is it goes retrograde more than any other planet because it has the shortest orbit. It does 3 retrogrades every year. Uh, and in the shape of those retrogrades, those 3 little back loops that it does makes a Mickey Mouse symbol. And also the moonwalk. When Michael Jackson does the moonwalk, that is a Mercury retrograde ritual. Every moonwalk ever has always been a Mercury retrograde ritual. And so when you mentioned the Back to the Future, Marty McFly, he's up on the stage and he's doing all the crazy wah, 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 and everybody's like kind of freaking out. And he does a moonwalk. If you remember, he actually busts a moonwalk on the stage. And he's Marty McFly, he's got that Mercury uh, mercantilism, and of course the retrograde, going back when time is the whole title of the whole film. It's the context of it all. So, and while we're at it, I want to seed this with the Back to the Future thing. I didn't know we were going to go here, but it's ripe for the picking for sure. When he puts his hat on, when he goes back to the dance, I think it's in the sequel. I'm not sure. It's been a while, but it's when he goes back and he's tracing his own steps. He's kind of double layering his own time travel. He wears a black hat this time. And you'll notice if you ever go and review it, people, when he's wearing the black hat, he manages to go unseen by most characters. I'm thinking specifically of the time when he's like looking in at the dance, he's wearing his undercover hat, and Biff comes and blasts the door open and it knocks him behind the door and he gets like jarred and kind of collapses between the door and the wall. And Biff Tannen like looks around in the camera and then walks off oblivious. Well, the black hat that Marty's wearing there, that is Pluto's hat of invisibility. And that is why he's able to go unseen with that little black hat symbolically. And so that's in what's Pluto's name? Hades. In Greek, the H is silent, so it's actually Hades, and
Oh,
that's part of the big picture weave we're aiming at. But I don't want to give up the ghost too soon. I just wanted to put all that together. That when we talk about Mercury, we got 80 is the number for Mercury on the periodic table, and then the moonwalk with Michael Jackson and the Mickey Mouse stuff. Whew, it's all there. It's so fun.
yeah, it's interesting. I um a, a few months ago, I don't remember if he was part of this weave or not, Gabe.
Mm-hmm.
It was on a Weaving Spiders Welcome. I it was when the Queen died, and everyone was talking about the Queen, and I thought it would be funny um, to start talking about Mickey Mouse because around the same time that the Queen died, Disney was doing their D23, which is kind of like their version of Comic Con, where it's just Disney. They call it D23.
Oh,
And that's where they released all the trailers for their upcoming films and projects and everything. Um, and I had started looking at it, and I was kind of doing a bit of a decode, and then it it was interesting because not only was it D23, but it was also the 100th anniversary of the Walt Disney Corporation. So Walt Disney has been a company for 100 years now, and they was making a big deal of it. And um, in fact, they just now released a teaser trailer for it. Back in D23, they only put a poster out, but now they just released, just like a couple of days ago, released a teaser trailer for their upcoming princess movie. And they're like, Kris, why are you talking about a princess movie? Because the subject matter of this princess movie is called Wish, and it's about the Disney wishing star. It's the origin of the Disney wishing star. So it's like they're connecting because all the Disney movies always have the wishing star in it. So they're
oh,
making a
right,
movie about the origin of the star that's in all their movies that you see at the beginning of all their, which is the North Star. And the
right.
princess in this movie, that's the princess of the wishing realm, is the they always each princess movie takes a different culture. This culture just happens to be a Islamic culture. So, and her pet, because each princess has like a pet companion, is a lamb. So they're drawing on the North Star and the Israel, and they're doing all this, and it's for their 100th anniversary, and it's the first. Into the Spider Verse was the movie, the animated movie Into the Spider Verse was one of the first theatrical movies to blend 2D and 3D. Well, Disney wants to do that now, and they're this new princess movie, Wish, is the first Disney movie that's blending the water painting of the Bambi, like the old school Disney, and the 3D elements of new school Disney. So they're merging the past and the current styles together. It's the
Yes.
100th anniversary. They're doing the Islamic, the Israelites. They're doing the wishing star. They're doing all that, and
Interesting.
it tripped me out because um I was like, man, Disney is here because that's around that time it was revealed that Disney's stock market was down like 30%, and it was at the lowest that it's ever been.
Wow.
in like the history of the Disney as a corporation. Their stock is the lowest it's ever been, and now they're doing this 100th anniversary extravaganza with the origins and trying to draw from the past and blend it with the future 3D technology. It was just, the whole thing tripped me out. So it's very, I didn't plan on bringing it up now, but it's
Uh-huh.
very, it fits in what we're talking about when we're talking about trying to balance the 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 fates, these sisters. That's what Disney is kind of doing. They're trying to get a little bit of everything in here.
Yes, yes. Man, that is fascinating. Yeah, the D23 came up in the Marvel thing recently too. I think that was the jail cell that they put um the fella from the Captain America 3, the Civil War episode. They put him in a jail cell with a D23, and everybody's like, yeah, that's a nod to Disney. But it's also got the 23 and Me. It's a BC, Old Testament. That also people's genes. It's a very heavily loaded number of the 23 for sure. Um,
Yeah.
it's interesting. The wishing star, though, it's like, oh, and you know what else they're kind of doing? They're drawing us. Uh, they're doing they're filling in backstory. That in and of itself is like pulling us backwards. You know what I mean? Going to the origin. That's going to be a big theme. Like, after the Marvel arc, the major Avengers arc, they killed Black Widow at the end, but then one of the first priorities they did was made a Black Widow prequel. And so just when you think you're in a sense of resolution or you get to the end of something, the next thing they're going to do is go, oh, but we're going to tell you what happened before all of that. And so there's kind of this, uh, I guess, a standard operating procedure that I'm starting to see where when you think that something is resolved or you think that somebody's dead and you can just move forward and go on to whatever's next, there's like, oh, but you were missing context of how we even got here. And they constantly are making prequels. It's kind of the new psyop in film too.
Yeah, that's also a narrative device, like at the beginning of a movie where for some reason, I guess since we're thinking of talking about Disney, the example of this that comes to mind is in the film Ratatouille.
Uh-huh.
Uh, at the beginning of the movie is him running out of the house with the cookbook, and the window glass breaks, and he freezes and goes, "I wonder how. I bet you're wondering how I got here." Then it
Goes backwards.
rewinds. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is such, which is interesting because when my degrees in film, and with all the English and writing classes that I have taken, they've told us that that is a lazy narrative device to not do that because it doesn't flow correctly. It makes your story be sort of choppy, and it's not professional, it's not classical, and they
Right.
warn us against it. And now, like you're talking about here, we're we're seeing it so much being used, and that's something that I have seen a lot, is breaking away from the classical. We're wanting to I guess you could say, rewrite history and talk
Yeah.
about mutable things. Um, one of the something that I have said in within the last year or so, I've come to the conclusion that the past is more mutable than the future,
Right.
because
Right.
just think about a memory. Every time you think of a memory, it slightly changes, so that your neural pathways to that memory kind of shifts. It's never fully the same with each iteration, with each time you think or tell the story back. And so it's kind of the same thing. And so it's through that they're trying to rewrite history because it's so mutable, and the best way to steer a future event would be to get people to react differently in the present by changing the way they think of the past, because if they're
Right.
the future will change by how they act in the present. The way they act in the present is dictated by what they remember of the past. So if you
Yeah.
rewrite the past, you can change the future. Which again, going back to the Future, what was Marty trying to do?
Totally. That's Orwell, right? Who controls the present now controls the past. And who controls the past controls the future.
Yeah,
I think that's
something
how that.
like that.
I think that's
I
how that
think
went.
that's more true. I didn't, I guess I didn't. It's just within the last year that I kind of wrapped my head around it more to where I can actually understand what that means.
Right. It is a really deep quote. Like I love how some quotes like that you come back to them later in your life and you're like, oh, it means more than I thought it did the first time. Let's see. Yeah, here it is. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. See, I think I got it wrong. That's how George Orwell laid that out. And another thing about this, it even layers onto the political right and the left, because we call the left is called the progressives. They're quick to say yes to anything and everything, and they'll just like go along to get along, and they want to have good manners. And then you have the conservatives who are more like, no, wait, y'all are trying to run ahead, and we haven't even talked about the foundations of the situation and how it got to be this way, and maybe we've made some mistakes along the way. We need to hold the horses and look back on how we got here and redefine the terms. So even that has its left and its right, which is kind of funny. Let me think about it. But that goes the opposite direction of how we read. Like the progressives are the left, but that's the backwards of how we read, and the conservatives are on the right side, but that's the opposite of how we read. So even our terminology is kind of a crossfire going on.
Yeah,
I
that's
want
interesting.
I want to read the definition of nostalgia, because there's something here too that I think is neat.
Okay, go for it.
Um, uh, three little definitions here: a bittersweet longing for things, persons, or situations of the past. That bittersweet is kind of interesting. That they put a flavor to it. Um, the condition of being homesick and homesickness, which a lot of people had to move recently with all the lockdowns and the getting fired from your job, and now we're going to move to Florida because we can have our guns if we want to, that kind of thing. The people
Yeah.
are going to have homesickness on in mass, which opens them up to the spell even more.
Yeah,
And
well, also, before you read the last one, I also like to mention that also fits in I recently just did a episode with our another mutual friend of ours, Mario of Symbolic Studies,
yeah,
and we was talking about Lovecraft and how Lovecraft has influenced film, and Lovecraft, his whole kind of um, ideology is he has this cosmic abandonment syndrome, and so that
wow,
homesickness would play into that. And Mario and I talked about how the reason why you have so many um, people are resonating with Lovecraft and using that as inspiration for these movies and video games and graphic novels and such, is because these people are, they're stuck behind the computer a lot, and they're or in front of their TV, in front of a device, and
uh-huh.
they're just kind of sitting in a room. They're online a lot. They have their online personalities, and their online personalities are always I identify as a 90s kid or 80s kid or a fan of X, Y, and Z. I'm in this
Right.
fandom, and they're just kind of they're not they're not venturing out, and they're not grounding and being with nature and being with God, so they're not feeling that connection, so they
Yeah.
do feel a cosmic abandonment. So the whole um and really um Lovecraft came out around when the industrial revolution was happening, and so and now we're at a digital revolution. Really, we're hitting another level of the digital age almost. So
Right.
it makes sense that that ideology of feeling this cosmic abandonment is connecting with a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of people in real life that's around my age that kind of adopts that Lovecraftian ideology without really realizing it,
Yep.
and all of them are heavily into nostalgia. They like the nostalgic things, so that's interesting that it's talking about being homesick.
Nice, man. I like that term. I'm keeping that in my pocket. Cosmic abandonment syndrome. Lovecraft has a specific personality. It's the strangely enough, has a relationship to what happened to the Germans when they went all crazy. Uh, that isolationist mentality. You know what I mean? He's a number 6 on the Enneagram, and that's a powerful corner of the Enneagram. They say that up to 50% of the world scores very heavily in that 6 grouping, where they're loyalists and they have a strong shadow of fear. Like that word eldritch, it literally means fearful. Things that there are rooted in fear. And this actually plays into that last definition here, man. That's so funny. The last definition, just an interesting word choice here: morbid longing to return to one's home or native country. Homesickness, especially in its severe forms, producing derangement of mental and physical functions. And so now that, like taking it to an extreme in that definition, we are going to also be dealing with a lot of migrational patterns. People talk about, there was like back in the 2016, I remember there were reports of a serpent of immigrants coming up from the south, and they would like show these aerial images of these people crossing rivers and carrying backpacks and kids in tow, and it was literally like a migrant path, but they would describe it as serpentine, and it was like a snake coming from down below. So like all of these people who are displaced from all the lockdowns and the fuckery that we just all went through collectively, this idea of nostalgia is going to be a very powerful string for everybody. And so I've been seeing it in when I went to see the newest Thor. Maybe it's not the newest, but the last Thor, they were playing all 80s music, hitting us hard with the 80s themed like neon lights, uh, and it was pulling on my heartstrings like in a major way. And I was like, this is a little heavy-handed. This is a little too heavy-handed. Like if it was a little more subtle, maybe I could buy into it. But it was so heavy-handed. I was like, this is. But maybe I'm not the target audience, but it's going to get a lot of people, and it's going to draw their admiration and their affection. And a lot of people are going to be saying to one another, like, remember how good the 80s were? I miss the 80s, Oh, we got gay Bud Light. What the fuck? Let's go back to the 80s, when things were great. And so that's I think what we're doing here is we're laying out how that is probably by design in a major way. This is part of the program.
Yeah, Stranger Things is the same way.
Oh, good call.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the reason why Stranger and look at Stranger Things. Stranger Things was, I believe, when I looked it up, was Netflix's first original series. So it was like Netflix's first production that they had made. So it's kind of like, I know, you was a part of our Who Framed Roger Rabbit discussion, and I think I mentioned that there as well. It's one of those again where it's like it's the first of its kind, just like the Wizard of Oz and all that. It's Stranger Things was its first of its kind, and what is it? It's just it's wrapped up in a nostalgic trip, but there's also a lot of triggers in it because
Yep.
it's softly kind of telling you this idea of MK Ultra, and it's also exposing you to these occult symbols and all these other things, but it's all wrapped with this glossy, nostalgic wrapping.
Yes, yes. And there, for a while, it was almost a pejorative to say, oh, they're stuck in the 80s. Like that was about 10 years ago when there was like a whole thing to make fun of people who were stuck in the 80s. But then like, did you ever watch, what is that? It's those two brothers who are Supernatural.
Yeah.
Supernatural was kind of like they were letting the release valve off of that judgment and actually harnessing it, marketing to it, coddling it in a way where like Supernatural was kind of the beginning of like, okay, I guess we're going to make it cool to be into the 80s again. And now it's like the floodgates are open. And I noticed, my kiddo, she just all of a sudden is into baggy pants. She's into the baggy clothes. She's like way into all things fashionably back into the baggy look, and I think that is very much marketed to her because it just happened. Like she just turned on a dime, and that's like her look now. And what that means. So, and I'm thinking it's like kind of 80s to the 90s. It's that turn of the in between, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of both is what I think we're looking at. And now there are so many more things to this. I don't think we could just go all night bringing up examples, but I want to point out like East Coast, West Coast. That was a thing back then with the Tupac and the Biggie, the rivalry between the East and the West Coast. And to the extent that we even had gang signs. I don't remember which is which, but one is like this and one is like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is a fascinating dynamic because right now we are in a culture war where Western culture, Western modernity is going to be vilified. Where I even made a joke, and I was only partially joking, but philologically, West is you just switch the ST and you get whites. White Western culture is getting homogenized in a major way right now. And so this whole idea of East and West that was kind of, it was kids play. It was for fun back in the 80s, because we were young and it was Biggie versus Tupac, But right now, the conservative and the progressives actually do map out in a major way. They call it left coast. They literally call California the left coast. And so these rivalries are going to get really intensified as people start pointing fingers at who, and the economy starts to go through all kinds of hell. And then also one last weave on that is last couple years, I've noticed how the weather is like an exact diametric opposition on a regular basis. We'll have fires in California and tornadoes and hurricanes on the East Coast, like Florida and all through up through the middle of the nation. And so it's like exactly the opposite. Super hot heat waves and extreme moisture over here. So even in the weather, we're experiencing this diametric opposition in how we in how we live, to the extent that you're like, I wish some of this water would go over to California. It would really help them out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
that's a good point. I hear that a lot, even here, and I live in the Midwest, of people saying like, "Oh, we need rain," and then they hear, in another state on the other side of the country, they get, "Oh, send that our way." Like that's a very common. It's a
totally.
phrase that people say a lot.
Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? It's in that it's almost like a nostalgia in itself. It's like a longing for what is elsewhere, or even envy. It's like generating an envy for what other people have.
Yeah,
And
it's even it's making me think of that line from, I think it's Californication from Red Hot Chili Peppers. It goes, the sun rises in the east, but at least it settles in but at least it settles in a final location. Okay, it rises in the east, and I guess it's cool. It sets it in the west. I guess it's cool. It's kind of a nonchalant, like, it's not as cool as the east, but at least it finds a place to rest. Like the whole line kind of just like kind of downplays the west.
nice, nice.
Yeah, something that also I'll briefly mention right here is the Super Mario Brothers movie. In it, they rewrite the story of how the narrative of Super Mario Brothers is set up in a way that instead of rescuing Princess Peach, now they're rescuing Luigi. The brothers in the title of the film get separated,
Wow.
and it's Mario and Peach who are trying to save Luigi. So
Oh,
you and we talk about the pairing in our discussion of Mario and Luigi and what that could possibly mean. And
right.
something that we didn't talk about is kind of what you're talking about now, is that east-west separation, that battle.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, just to if we put that switch under the light of this conversation,
Yeah.
how that would change that narrative.
Yeah, buddy.
Because Joshua the Brain pointed out that Luigi is the L, which is a Roman numeral, and Mario is the M, which is another Roman numeral.
Whoa,
So you
that's
have the L
fun.
and M, and they separate them. And
Wow, that is really fun. Well, I'm not totally savvy on the family dynamics of the Mario brothers. Are they twins, or are
it's
or is one old, or are they not twins?
see that's the gray area that we talk about.
Yeah,
The Mario Brothers, it had no lore. Mario started out in the Donkey Kong game. He was just the jump man trying to save the princess from the giant ape.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then they made the Mario Brothers movie, and it just had blurbs, little blurbs. And
yeah,
over time, when they made more games and translated it into English, they added a little bit more and a little bit more. So now the canon is kind of all over the place. So
yeah,
now you have people who are nostalgic for their favorite Mario game debating on what's canon, because this person who was in charge of making this Mario game in the 80s says something else than whoever was in charge of making the Mario game from the 90s.
Okay,
And
okay,
then
that
the
okay,
movie is trying to borrow from all of them to please everyone. So the
right.
movie has like this really weird gray area canon.
Yeah, all right. Well, well, I think even regardless of the twin factor, we can, because they are brothers, we can absolutely count on them relating to the Gemini constellation, because it is the twins, but it's the brothers, the hermanos. And anybody who looks at that constellation, you would be challenged not to see the anthropomorphizing of two stick figures walking arm in arm. I mean, it's one of the most obvious constellations. Even if you didn't have any guide, you could almost pick it out with no experience. You would look at the shape of it and say, it looks like two dudes in brazos. And so they're embraced. Their brazo means arms. And so they're in arms. And they look like two pillars standing arm in arm. And it's very fascinating that it's your Second Amendment that gives you the right to bear arms. So there is such a huge weave around Gemini and its relationship uh, to the archetype of relations, being you're close to those in your family. It also it relates to the Civil War. When the Civil War happened, that was brother against brother. And so when they can pit you against the people who are most like you, or the people you relate to the most, it's the next thing they can do to put pitting you against yourself. You know, and if you can't even get along with your brother, it actually reflects on how you feel about yourself.
Yeah.
So that's a very old program, and it's embedded in our language in really fascinating ways. Uh,
So the last thing I will say about the Mario Brothers, I was because I don't want to rehash a lot of since I just recorded that episode. But I feel like I should bring this up to you because of what you just said. I think you'll get a kick out of it. So I'll leave the Mario stuff right here, and that is in the new movie. There's a wedding towards the end, and it's supposed to be Bowser and Pete. Bowser has his whole thing where he's like actually in love with Peter. He's trying to force her to marry him,
uh-huh.
and so they 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 crash the wedding to try to stop it, and Peach gets away, and so there's an empty altar of where Bowser and Peach once stood, and Mario and his raccoon power up, because he's using the raccoon power up, so he's in a raccoon onesie, is how they depict it, is standing in front of the art altar, and that's when he's uh, reunited with his brother Luigi for the first time since the beginning of the movie. And so now you have two brothers standing in front of the altar, one
Yeah.
dressed up as a raccoon. And Luigi goes to Mario and says, "Are you a bear?" And a bear is slang for a husky gay man. So you have two
Oh,
brothers standing in front of the altar, reuniting, embracing each other because they're reunited for the first time. And then one goes, "Are you a bear?"
that's a trip. That is a trip. So,
So so when you're talking about Gemini embracing
yeah,
and brothers, it made me think of that scene. And
it is, yeah,
obviously it's like it's trying to signal something
right,
in a
right.
certain way, and
So,
it's very interesting.
yeah, man. So in the zodiac, in Gemini, there's three minor decans in Gemini. Obviously, there's the two brothers. You get Lepus is the little bunny rabbit, and then you get Canis Major and Canis Minor. are a little dog and a big dog, but they're kind of like brothers. They have the likeness of one another. And then just to the 1 degree over is the bear constellations. In Cancer, when you cross over the solstice, you get Ursa Major, Minor. But then opposite of Gemini, down in Sagittarius, across the zodiac, 180-degree relationship, which is a very valid degree of orientation. It's always, I always look at what's on the opposite side also. And sure enough, there's an altar. It's called Ars Altera, is the altar constellation. And so that scene was very zodiacally impeccable. And it just never ceases to blow my mind how they bring the ingredients of the zodiac into film to make sure that children are getting these symbols uploaded on some level. And the consistency of it will play out throughout their lives. It'll be a table in some cases. It'll be, like Doctor Strange, he's Sagittarius, he's the Magi card. His opening scene, he's got a table when he's doing surgery. And then when he reverses the time warp on the apple, he's doing the apple on a table. So the table is always like this subtle backdrop prop, but it'll have this consistency. And it's there every time if you know what you're looking at. It's such a trip.
Yeah. The last nostalgic property that I would like to mention is I left a voice message of this to you the other day, is Star Trek, because I sat through 2 episodes of Star Trek Picard the other night, and it has to do with Gemini as well. So it fits into this part right here of our conversation. And so Star Trek Picard is supposed to be a follow-up to The Next Generation, where Jean-Luc is older now. He's old man, kind of like what they did with Wolverine with Logan, like that whole like old man hero type of motif. That's what they're doing with Star Trek Picard. But it's really interesting because the whole premise is that Picard is retired from Starfleet, and he resigned on his own will because there was like an Order 66. If you're a Star Wars fan, you'll be familiar with Order 66 from the Stormtroopers flip sides. Someone hacks all the synthetics, so that would be like Data, and all the other characters in the Star Trek universe that are synthetic life forms. They hack them, and Mars is supposed to be in the Star Trek universe is supposed to be fully run by synthetics. So all the synthetics turn on Mars and kill everything and start blowing everything up. So basically all of Mars, it's still intact, but everything on the surface has been blown up and destroyed because of synthetics. So they banned synthetic life forms. And Picard wanted to save everyone from Mars. Starfleet thought it was a lost cause. So that's when Picard turned in his badge and his gun and all that, and was like, I'm retiring because you're not matching my moral standards. I would want to save them, you wouldn't, so I'm going to leave now. So he leaves and he retires, and then he starts having visions of Data, who everyone has nostalgic for Data. I've seen multiple cosplays of Data. He's a popular character, and the first time you see him outside of Picard's visions is you see his body dismembered in a drawer, like his arm, his head, his leg, and they had dismembered him because they dismembered all the synthetics. So you're seeing something that you're nostalgic for if you grew up with the next generation, and it's laid out in front of you, broken in pieces.
Wow.
But Jean-Luc Picard's visions of Data is him doing a painting of a girl, and he's like, "You got to finish it for me." And that painting is turns out to be his daughter. So someone took the program that Data was built on and all his memories and everything, and created the first organic synthetic quantum consciousness life form that's like the first of its kind, and based on Data's data. and and so but they call her Data's daughter. So they're trying to say, it's kind of like, oh, this is his daughter, this is like, it reminded me a lot of the artificial wombs and everything that's been in the news lately. Like they're trying to make you kind of feel for it. But the way that this scientist did his experiment to create this organic synthetic life form of Data's daughter, it had to make two copies. It couldn't just make one. So Data actually has two twin daughters, two twins, and one. And then there's this cabal that's against synthetics that kills one of them and is after the other. So Picard is trying to find the last twin before the cabal can find them. And everyone thinks he's like an old man that's just nostalgic for the glory days. So they're shaming Picard, like, dude, you're just old. You're off your rocker. You don't have visions. You just have some type of Alzheimer's where you're just glorifying the glory days. And take your medicine, old man. And it's just and then the last thing I'll say about it is they have the Borg, and it's very gruesome. They have the Borg laid out again. I've seen a lot of cosplay for it, and I know there's a lot of nostalgic for the Borg character in the Star Trek universe. And they remove the eyepiece, the famous eyepiece, but then they show all the tendons and everything. So it's very gruesome. And I'm sitting here like, what kind? Because you can see, kids watching Star Trek Next Generation because it's more lighthearted. It's something that you could see that is family oriented. And I was sitting here watching Picard, and I'm like, I don't think this is family oriented. In fact, they're making something that you have a nostalgic connection to, like the Borg, like Data, and they're making it seem kind of gruesome by showing their body parts and their tendons and making it all bloody and gory. That's kind of killing your childhood, because you have that whole meme of like, oh, ruining your childhood. I want to ruin your childhood. It's very interesting.
Yes, another thing that it brings to mind for me, like when you were describing him in the drawer in separate pieces, obviously the Osiris thing, but there's this whole movement, and they have put so much money into seeding this concept onto the masses around false memory syndrome. And they want everybody to be locked and loaded to accuse one another that you're falsifying your own memories and that you don't remember correctly your own experiences. That's a whole rabbit hole in and of itself. But that idea of being dismembered or being put back together wrong, or all of that is definitely the path has been laid for them to tell the individual that no, you're just remembering things wrong, and then for that matter, we keep idea. One day you look up something and you go back to look it up again, and now it's different, and you're like, oh, is that a mandala effect, or am I just remembering wrong? So it really seeds this real deep root, a tap root of fundamental doubt. And that's going to be a real hard obstacle for all of us going forward, is weaponized doubt. There's two things has been on my radar for a long time now. Politicized science. Science is supposed to be objective, but if it's funded, it's not objective. It's in somebody's wallet. It's in somebody's pocket. So politicized science, which cannot be objective because they're paying for the results they're getting, and then weaponized doubt, which is basically this kind of thing of like, you can't even remember your own experiences objectively.
Yeah.
Can you bring up the one of those graphics I sent you?
Yeah, which one do you want to start with? This is a good point.
Let's do the one with it's got a Virgo, the Virgo, she's sideways and there's a big sickle on it, and it's talking about Ukraine as the breadbasket of Europe.
Okay.
I'll just kind of put this in people's heavens before we really lean into the potential cosmic cause. I don't want to say cause, but a cosmic contributing factor. We'll put it that way.
Twisted.
This was a discovery I made quite a while ago. So a lot of people refer to Ukraine as the breadbasket of Europe. Tons and tons of grain may not make it out of the country this year. Well, whenever we hear breadbasket, we should very much be thinking about the season of harvest, which is right between the 8 is Leo and 9 is Virgo. And so here I want to give everybody kind of the framework of the zodiac, that we are really going to focus on this transition from the 8, the lion, and the 9, which is Virgo, because something really fascinating has happened as of the year 2012, when it's a revision. They went back and changed. They retroactively went back and changed something called the Smit-Mundt Act. And so in 2012, Barack Obama, he did the Smit-Mundt I misspoke. Smit-Mundt Remodernization Act. And they went and they completely flipped the script on a law that was put in place back a few days after we dropped the nukes in Japan. They made it a law that you cannot propagandize domestically. It was illegal to lie to the American public. And Barack Obama in 2012, he went and he flipped that whole script inside out. Not only did he make it legal, he incentivized it so you can make big dollars off of lying to the American public. And can you go to the bottom of that little image? This corresponds. It's just
yeah.
Oh, there it is. I'm not seeing it because of my screen. Okay, yeah, my bad. Okay. So yes, so these 4 stars are very crucial in astrology. The Aldebaran, Regulus, Antares, and Fomalhaut. They are the 4 royal stars. A lot of people will recognize on most Wheel of Fortune cards, and also in most world cards, there will be these, it's called the tetramorph. It's the 4 corners of the cards have these, the bull, the lion, the man, and an eagle. And these 4 stars correspond with those zodiacal constellations. Now, what has happened, and they say that it's because of the precession of the equinox. I don't want to get into the controversy of all that. I just want people to know that the territory that was once considered Virgo, it has, as of 2012, it was the last of the 4 corners of those 4 royal stars. 2012 was the last of those 4 stars that has now shifted into the territory of Virgo. And so some people think Regulus is the heart of the lion. I think it's the butthole of the lion, but I don't want to get into that. But it is now officially, it is in the territory of Virgo, which means all 4 royal stars are officially in mutable positions. In you know that phrase that like millionaires don't pay attention to astronomy, billionaires do. And so this kind of adjustment of the heavens is going to affect the fundamental regulations of the realm in a major way. And I think that that is part of what the Smit-Mundt Modernization Act comports to. It confirms that all of the royal stars are in mutable houses. And the word mutable is to say changeable. We're going through a renovation of epic proportions. And I'm pretty sure Aldebaran has been in Gemini for a very long time, according to this adjustment frame, which is just interesting that we have so many things. It's an air sign. Gemini is an air sign. So we have so many things about the germs, the Germans, the brothers, the twins, all those things, twin towers, all of those have been in a mutable age for a very long time. But just recently, the lion has moved into this, a section of the lion is now considered sharing space with the Virgo. And so this is the 8 and the 9. And it is just really hitting a chord because of our weave tonight. on the 80s and the 90s, and looking the nostalgia that's going to draw our emotional heartstrings back to this time of the 8 and the 9, because we talk about these things in terms of decades.
Yeah. Wow. That's
And then,
so fascinating.
isn't it a trip? And
Yeah.
there's a lot more consistency to all of this. It's not just like a one-off kind of thing. Like you can, if you want to pull up any of those, any of the ones that I sent you that are uh, draw your attention, but there is a lot of consistency to this. And when you look at, and it's very hard to bring all of the evidence to bear at once. We're going to do our best. But when you start looking at all of this evidence, um, it's pointing to a massive psychological uh, potentiality. You know, I sometimes I hesitate to give the manipulators too much credit, you know, and it's essentially they're really just harnessing inevitability. This is a good one. Nice, perfect. Yeah, perfect shift. So they're basically harnessing what is inevitably going to happen no matter what, you know, so that it looks like we are playing into their will. But that's not really what's happening. The thing that can be manipulated is the world stage. You can put these characters in positions with these personalities, with these names, and then it looks like you're doing magic. You know, it's all sleight of hand, really. Uh, but this is a project that I've been doing on the Slick Dissident shared learning experience. And I learned that Carl Jung was brought in by Alan Dulles to do a psychological evaluation on the Nazis. And he gave Carl Jung agent number. He gave him the title Agent 488. And Dulles is quoted to have said that the world may never fully appreciate how much Carl Jung contributed to the defeating of the Nazis in World War II. And there's so much more to that little nugget. But so what I took that as is my prompt to maybe I should do a psychological profile on the people on the world stage. And I was like, what is like the most simplistic, easy access, readily available to the common man personality matrix? And there are quite a few out there. You know, a lot of people have taken the test before they go and do an interview or get a job. You know, they've got all these different matrices to kind of I don't want to say stereotype, but get a grasp on your personality to see if you're a fit for the job. Well, this is a very simplistic one, and I am totally guilty of oversimplifying. But just for the sake of delivery, the Enneagram is a great tool that I recommend to anybody. And it's basically 9 personality types. And I am aware that there are more than 9 personalities in the world, but this is a very nice, concise generalization of these personality types. And it's highly functional, very useful. So what I did was I just started plugging in personalities off of the world stage, people who influence our consciousness, who are going to talk about a lot, who are going to be movers and shakers and world trade breakers, as I call them. And sure enough, uh, I've got some really solid fits. I mean, these people fit in a way that I'd almost be inclined to think it's by design. You know, like uh, you can't put Donald Trump in any of the other positions. You know, you can't really uh, maneuver or wiggle most of these personalities. They just don't fit in the other 8 spots. They are just like an epitome example of each one of these personalities.
Yeah, it's like typecasting
Mhm.
for
Got
a
it.
political world stage
Yeah,
characters. You need the right actors, the right ingredients for things to happen.
that's exactly what's up. You called it, man. That's so perfectly put. And so now in the Enneagram, they have, each one of these stations has a whole slew of synonyms. So when I say a reformer or a perfectionist, there are actually 5 or 6 other really good descriptors. So again, I want to just be clear that we are generalizing just for the sake of expedience. You know, we're really simplifying the map here. And in most Enneagram systems, you're not going to find the planetary correspondences. So Enneagram personality matrices are very psychological. And it is, in fact, in the esoteric realm where you find the planetary correspondences. So I'm taking 2 systems and I'm fusing them together. The center Enneagram has the planetary relationships. And what's kind of neat is I've been able to learn about the Enneagram personality thing, and I've also overlaid this with the pantheon, with the Greek pantheon. And that's when things get super interesting, because I realized that these personalities on the world stage, they are playing gods. They literally are typecast to play out the role of the gods in our psychology.
Yeah,
And
I would like to um, intersect here a little bit and
yeah,
point out that Greek tragedies,
uh-huh.
they didn't see the as just acting as we see today. We watch a play or something, and oh, those are just actors. No, in Greek tragedies, these festivals that would take days of acting out these mythos, they understood they was channeling the gods. They understood once they put the mask on and acted it out, they was channeling. They was a conduit. They was a vessel for whatever entity that they was playing. So we're talking about a greater magical perspective rather than just acting something out. We're talking about something a bit more higher, I guess you could say, um, than just modern actors.
That's exactly right, buddy. That is exactly right. And ever since I started to really study the Greek cosmology and how they believed, you know, the way that inspiration works, and the way that, like, even influence, you know, how that works. Like the word, those 2 words, we take them for granted. We really take the word inspiration and influence. We totally take them for granted, because inspiration in Greek means to take in a god or to be of a god. And so when an actor or a piece of art inspires you, there is literally a spirit or a personality type of the human experience that is, you are being embodied by. And so, and that is kind of where the rubber meets the road on the Enneagram. And then the other word, what did I, oh, influence. Influence literally comes from having the stars, these dynamics of the heavens, altering your well-being in some way or another. So we take these words, inspiration and influence, totally for granted. We give them this mundane, blasé, we just roll right over these words. But the words have such deeper meaning. And that's been really enriching my life, to try to grasp how the Greeks see it, because as far as I can tell, the people on the world stage are still adhering to that system of
Yeah,
influencing us.
I actually just mentioned to someone today. I was like, you know what one modern way of thinking that kind of I totally don't vibe with,
Uh-huh.
and that is the idea that there's nothing new under the sun. And I said the reason why is because when you are inspired, when you are divinely inspired,
Yes.
your muse is God, and God is the infinite. So that means imagination, that means creation is infinite. So if creation is infinite, that means you can infinitely create, which means I mean, that means that would totally debunk the whole "there's nothing new under the sun" type of mentality. And the context of the conversation I was having was we was talking about nostalgia and AI and like recycled art and like sampling, and how there was a trend of wanting to kind of revamp or retell and not have a original idea, and the excuse is, well, there's nothing new under the sun, so I might as well just retell this or redo this. And so it's very synchronistic that we're talking about that, because I was literally just saying that today, that inspiration is infinite, and what you're saying totally goes along with that.
That's awesome, buddy. That is awesome. Yeah, man. I'm with you. That phrase, I've caught myself using it in certain contexts, but I am not down. I like to think that every word I speak is new under the sun. When I made my baby, when I brought her into this world, that was new under the sun, and the world will never be the same now that she's here. You know what I mean? And every day is better because I brought her into this world. Uh, so yeah, I love to kind of keep it the glass can never, is always mostly full, but it never fills all the way up. And the glass just gets bigger and bigger and more full. That's how I see
Yeah.
it. so this map is kind of crucial to the point that you and I are kind of coming together, because you were bringing on the nostalgia thing, and I was like, buddy, this spell is so huge because uh, Donald Trump is a number 8. He's the guy that you love to hate. All these things that we're gonna debate. And if you're late, then you're gonna wish that he is Saturn. He's playing the role of Saturn. I have Auriga here, the charioteer. That's a little out of context for for what we're bringing here now. Auriga is the charioteer. He's Vulcan. He does play the challenger role in a certain context, but Donald Trump is absolutely Saturnian. He's got the hair swoosh haircut. He eats McDonald's every night. Mac means the son of. So Saturn eats his own children all the time, constantly, so they can't replace him. So Donald Trump eats McDonald's all the time. He's playing the role of Saturn. He's totally the Saturnian challenger. And I should tell people this about the Enneagram. So what I have listed are the labels, the kind of the ascended, positive, helpful labels of each personality. Well, each of them have a shadow that is not listed on this graph. And their shadow is kind of, it's the inevitable byproduct of a leader or a challenger. Their inevitable byproduct is going to be, they will be overly controlling. They have a problem with lust. Those are their shadows that are kind of stronger for that personality type. And so controlling and lustfulness is totally a part of the grab them by the pussy psyop that Donald Trump has embodied for so many people for such a long time. And so much of their criticism, regardless of who you're for or against, your criticism of Donald Trump is actually going to play right into his shadow in a major way. And so that's part of what I've been kind of processing, is these quintessential 8 personas, and not just Donald Trump. I've done this with philosophers and characters throughout history. I did it with Star Wars. So in Star Wars, this would be Darth Vader. He's a shell of anger. Well, that's a challenger. literally the shell of anger that is Darth Vader is a number 8, quintessential number 8. And then number 9 is this peacemaker or a slothful one, is generally enjoys solitude, is a recluse, kind of almost goes unnoticed a lot of the times, kind of comes out of nowhere. And they have this, their shadow is sloth. And in the planetary bodies, or in the pantheon of the Greeks, this would be Hades or Pluto. And so what has really blown my mind, and ever since I've seen it, it's only become more and more confirmed with like 100,000 little bits of evidence. But Joseph Robinette Bident is playing out Hades in a major way, ladies and gentlemen, in a major way. So Pluto has a few names that are important. He is Hades, Pluto. In Rome, his name was Dis. And some of his symbols is, Cerberus, like you pointed out. He often has the bident, that's the two-pronged fork. And it's more than just the fact that Joe Biden's name matches up with the bident. There is way more to it than that. Because some of the epithets of Hades are the unseen, or the remover of all things, the illustrious one, and let me see, I have it written down. The dreaded one. He's got a bunch of nicknames. But we'll see in just a little bit how, Joe Biden is playing this inevitable role of a flow through the Enneagram from the 8 to the 9. Now, I guess I should say this too, because it is hard to bring all this evidence to bear. One thing that I found very alarming was that Obama is a number 7 personality. This epicurist, this enthusiast, with the shadow of glutton. Obama plays into the role of the number 7 because he's a glutton. He ran out of bombs. He spent so many bombs that he ran out. So what I started to discover was that actually the presidential line has been a progression from the 6 would have been the Bush brothers, or the Bush family. There were 2 Bushes. Well, number 6 in the pantheon is the twins. It's Artemis and Apollo. And so there's actually a correspondence to the 2 Bushes in the position of 6, Obama as a 7, Trump as a 8, and now we got Biden is Pluto as the number 9. So what I'm seeing here is that they're actually going chronologically through the Enneagram. And before I made that realization that the presidential line is flowing just like clockwork, clockwise through this Enneagram, I had already associated Tulsi Gabbard with this number 1 perfectionist reformer position. And for many reasons, some of which are that she is playing the role of Athena. And Athena is absolutely a quintessential number 1 personality, reformer, perfectionist with a shadow of wrathfulness. The brother of Athena is Ares. Her brother is the god of war. Well, Tulsi Gabbard is a war veteran, badass, and she's also accomplished specifically in the psychological operations department of the war machine. And so I just find that so fascinating that that's her specialty. That's her forte, is psychological operations. And Athena was born out of the head of Zeus. So see how there's a line going from number 1 over to number 7? Athena comes out of the head of Zeus. She's born out of his head. Well, Obama is a number 7. Athena comes out of Obama's head. Guess where they're both from? They're both from the island of Hawaii. they both have a common root. And so Hawaii, being their shared common ground, and Athena coming out of Zeus's head, there's this crazy relationship from Obama #7 personality type to Tulsi Gabbard, the #1 personality type, that is reflective of Zeus and Athena from the Greek pantheon. Isn't that a
Wow,
trip?
that that's so interesting. Yeah, it's also interesting because going back to Disney, I just saw something today that they are remaking Moana into a live action, and
Oh my God.
it's the closest remake from the original. They usually wait at least a decade before they remake something, and
Yeah.
it's only been 7 years since Moana originally came out, and it's a Hawaiian, you know, um, inspired princess.
Yes.
And so the article that I saw was making this big thing about Disney breaking the remake decade rule and
Wow.
remaking Moana 7 years after its original release.
That is really fascinating. So, oh my gosh, there's so much to this. You're blowing my mind, Kris. So another #7 is Socrates. Um, oh my gosh. So the what's the name of the god that Moana is uh, dealing with?
Uh,
I forget his name.
I'll have to look it up. I forget too.
He's got the super cool name. Well, he has a question mark shaped uh, uh, sword. His knife is in the shape of a question mark, and that is Socrates is wielding questions, and that actually corresponds to the Navratri project I just did. There's a Hindu holiday of 9 days of the Navratri, and the Devi in position #7 is wielding the question mark shaped sword. Just like Socrates, just like a quintessential enthusiast who is a glutton for curiosity, who can't
Maui. He was
Maui.
just called Maui. And it's interesting. I just looked it up for us, and
Yeah.
the first article that came out said Dwayne The Rock Johnson, who voiced Maui, is already slated to reprise the role in the live action. So they
Oh my
picked
God.
The Rock again to play the same character.
That's a trip. That's a trip. And you know what? I haven't really looked at it too much, but it'd be fascinating if he's a Zeus enthusiast, glutton personality. That would be really
I would
fascinating.
imagine he played Black Adam, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
a Zeus character.
Damn, there is just so much to that. Okay, this weave is getting real big, real fast, brother.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah,
So
I guess the something else I'll mention here really quick since we're talking about the Enneagram
yeah.
and Pluto is I mentioned this to you before, but since we're recording now,
Mhm.
there you can now get JFK's glasses, and
Oh,
I couldn't find the article, but I did find, or I couldn't find the ad, but I did find an article.
yes,
Let me pull it up here really quick.
that is blowing my mind, bro. Uh, so
So
one thing,
here's an article. If you can
what?
see,
So Pluto is the slothful one for many reasons, but it makes a lot of sense to anybody who's who knows their planetary order, because that's the furthest planet. It has the slowest orbital path, and it has returned. As of 2022, Pluto has returned to the signing of the Declaration of Independence of the nation, and it is now dancing right along the boundary of Aquarius. And so the power of the destructive force of this renovator, it's literally also synonymous with the plow. Like it's going to till up the earth and destroy everything in its path and land it and lay everything flat. That's another thing about Pluto, is it makes everything flat again. It creates an even playing field. And so all this flat earth cosmology stuff that's going around is playing into the Plutonian agenda of tilling the earth and laying everything to waste with no stone left on top of the other. There's some biblical shit going on with Pluto's return here.
Wow.
Big love to my flatties. I love my flatties, but I just got to tell y'all that you're playing into Pluto's plan here. All right.
Yeah. So it's so interesting. The ad that popped up in my feed was like this, as I was just showing it to you, this American Dream white picket fence, summertime, polo rocking, American Eagle wearing, but um,
Is
they're
it American Eagle?
advertising these glasses, and it's a nostalgic trip because there are people that are longing for the days of the American dream, because a lot of people say the American dream is dead now. It's unsuitable for today's climate. So
Yeah,
you
buddy.
have people that are being nostalgic for the American dream, and they're um, using it to advertise that now you can get JFK's legendary American optical sunglasses for
Oh my God.
$250 a pop.
Is it American Eagle?
Yes.
Oh my fuck. Kris, I can't handle it, bro. Okay. Okay, we're on the record. I got to get it out there. I mean, this is huge.
Do it.
It's all so huge. The American Eagle logo, that little bird, that nondescript bird, it is the shape of Belphegor. The Belphegor's prime, the logo for Belphegor's prime is some people describe it as an upside down pi sign. It was harvested from the Voynich manuscripts, and it is the shape of a bird. And when you look at the American Eagle logo and you look at the shape of this Belphegor's prime, it is absolutely a one-to-one correspondence. And now, can you pull up maybe the one with Pluto and Joe Biden, who his entire fashion statement, his signature maneuver, they've been talking about this since before he was president. I think it's like 2014. There were articles talking about Joe Biden has this signature look that everybody recognizes him for. They say like Abraham Lincoln had his top hat, you know, that was like, when I see that top hat, I think of Abraham Lincoln every time. In fact, that's how we describe it to one another. Well, Joe Biden has a fashion statement that he gets a lot of credit for, and it plays into the responsibility of Hades. Hades is the god of the shades. That is literally what they call him in Greece. He's the god of the shades. And here, this top article, oh, and that's through GQ also, was given him this wardrobe credit. Yeah, he's the Don. He's known to don shades. Don is like a Don, is like a god, basically. That's an old ass article from way back in the days. And then there's even a newer one where they're talking about him and his damn shades again. And so the whole thing is just blowing my mind. Now, another point here is that the astrological symbol for Pluto is the bident, this two-pronged fork. That is the symbol for Hades, and for Pluto, the planet. So it's not like we're making a stretch by saying, oh, Hades and the planet are related just because of their name. It's not just because of their name. Their sigil is identical as well. And now you're telling me that a freaking okay. So Belphegor is the infernal spirit of sloth. Belphegor is number 9 on the Enneagram. If I had to put all the devils in the circle of the Enneagram, the one devil who his symbol is the American Eagle logo, he belongs in the position of the 9. And so that just, I did not expect that to come up tonight. Thank you for
Wow.
that, Kris.
And yeah, and you said to me before we recorded, I believe that the name Kennedy is being tossed around again.
Yes, because of the junior, Kennedy Jr. I always mess up his name. I think it's Robert Kennedy Jr. is going to run for president again. And so just that fact alone draws everybody into a trauma knee-jerk response. The name Kennedy being whatever circulated again in common parlance is actually going to draw up the spirit of the birthing of the proliferation of the word conspiracy theorist. It was after the JFK assassination that the CIA, literally Dulles, or I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it was Dulles, but they basically brought out this term that they would give to the people so that they could self-lobotomize and stop analyzing and stop thinking, stop discussing or questioning the authority. And they were like, let's just give everybody this term conspiracy theorist. And it's the word theory that they thought was going to pull the bottom out from under the hundreds and thousands of questions that were going to be drummed up after the assassination of Kennedy. But I just want to point out that a theory isn't a theory until after a test. It starts out as a hypothesis, then you test it, then you have a theory. So if you really are keeping true to science, the word theory has a lot of station. It has a lot of power to it. It means it survived the testing phase. And so you're actually halfway through the scientific process, because it's not conspiracy hypothesizers. That's too long to say. So when you say the word theory, you're actually talking about something that does have substance. I just wanted to put that forward too.
Nice. That's a really good point.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
So if you, I don't know if you want to pull up any of the other ones, but ultimately this weave is really, I just want to put forward, this is my hypothesis that I'm testing presently. We're testing it right now. And I'm very excited if it becomes a theory going forward for other people. But this nostalgia of the 8 and the 9, the ADs, Hades, in the 90s, both of those terms are playing into the personality of Donald Trump, Saturn versus Pluto, all this acrimony in this battle between whose side are you on, the left or the right? Are you Trump or Biden? And now they're going to bring in a Kennedy into the mix, which is like kind of crazy. And if any of those 3 guys get injured or hurt, or they fake their assassination or fake their death, the entire nation is going to lose their freaking mind. They're going to really lose their mind. And the fact that we now have 3 possible candidates for presidency, that increases the likelihood that somebody's going to, I mean, I think it's all theater. You know, I don't think somebody's really going to die, but all they got to do is fake assassination attempt. And it doesn't even have to work. That's the other thing. They could just have like a firework go off and everybody, oh, get down. We got to, Sirhan 2.0 in the house. It's so profound. It's so profound.
One monkey fell off and bumped his head.
Right. And that's another thing. What was I going to say? Sirhan. Oh, I forgot already. But yeah, if they oh yes, okay, okay. The 0-year curse. The 0-year curse was from the Battle of Tippecanoe. Uh, Chief, let's see, Chief Tippecanoe, he had a brother who was a shaman. His name was Tenskwatawa. He put a curse on the presidential line, such that every president who was elected with the year that was inaugurated on a year that ends in a 0, every one of those presidents died for very many years until Reagan. They didn't kill him. He got shot, but they didn't kill him. And then with Bush, there was an attempt, but it didn't go through. It didn't work. So they've actually missed the last 2 presidents who were on the 0-year curse. Well, Biden is lined up for this, the curse of Tippecanoe, the Tippecanoe curse. And that's a fascinating thing too, because that curse happened on a lunar standstill in 1812 about, which was a very essential, crucial year for earthquakes, reversing of the flow of the Mississippi. There was a lunar standstill that fueled this curse. It's been 12 lunar standstills since that year. And in 2024, I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure, I think it's in March, April, May. I think it's May or June of 2024 is the next lunar standstill that's going to happen. And we have a president who's lined up for the 0-year curse again, Biden. And I'm very inclined to think he's the one who's going to get it, so that people can absolutely go berserkers.
Yeah, the idea of a curse and an annual curse, if that is interesting, especially in the light of this conversation, especially the way we started it, talking about the 3 fates, the 3 sisters. Because
Right.
if you have a curse, it's something from the past that it's going to affect the present. But if it's an annual curse that happens on a schedule, it also is going to affect the future.
Right, buddy. Right.
So a curse like that can cover all 3.
Yes. Oh, and guess how old Joe Biden is?
How old is he?
80s.
Oh,
He just turned 80s.
wow. Yeah.
There's so much consistency.
So much. I guess since we're kind of winding this this discussion to a close, the last thing I was going to ask you about is you brought up in our messages Aragon.
Oh, dude. All
And
right.
so I'm going to bring that up here.
Sweet, brother.
Going
Sweet.
to end on.
Yeah, man. Oh, so yeah, great call. So I'll just start riffing now. They discovered a temple to Pluto in Turkey, and it's a very vast complex. And by the way, I just want to say this: I only half believe anything. Like when I put these things forward, it's not that I believe them; it's that the collective is going to fuel this mythology in such a way that it will manifest in fascinating ways. So I just want to say that, like, I always have one foot out of the door of all of these stories, but this one is quite fascinating, that they found a temple in Turkey to the god Pluto, and it is explicitly to Pluto, dedicated to Pluto, and there is a great amount of mythology around it, but one of its very interesting features is that there is a toxic gas that is being released out of this entryway that is said to have been a location where people would come and make a sacrificial offering. They would throw animals into this hole where these gases, these fumes are coming out of this chasm, and the animals would die from the fumes. And then they would use that as a chance to commune with the dead or make a deal with the dead. And, I learned some really cool traditions they used to do. Like when your loved one passes away, you can actually burn a garment as a gift to your loved one, and they'll be down in Hades, and the gift will arrive there to them. So, like one guy, he found out that his wife was cold in hell, and so he burnt a robe for her so she could be warm and cozy down in hell. And I just love how that's such a cool little tradition. There's more to the story that's kind of creepy, weird stuff, but I just love how that happens. So they found this temple in Turkey, and sure enough, there's this gas coming out of it, and down around the ledges, there's all these skeletons of all these birds that people were and animals that people had offered over the years, and the gas is still coming out of it allegedly. So in my research, I discovered that the gas, the element, it's a noble gas. It's a very fascinating fact. Many of the noble gases on the periodic table, they add up to a 9. 18 is argon. 18 argon is a gas that they actually use to kill poultry. Still today, they use it to kill off poultry, specifically after a disease outbreak. They will gas the birds so that the disease will not spread. And also the other noble gases, there are like 3 other ones that their number sums up to a 9 in the noble gas column. Well, this is fascinating because the word argon literally translates to the word sloth. It's slothful. It's unreactive. Because it's not reactive to other elements. That's why they call it argon. And so I just found that absolutely fascinating. And on the 9th tarot card, the Virgo, the Hermit card, there's literally the Argos constellation. It's like a paper boat. The shafts of light on the Thoth Crowley Hermit card, the shafts of light make the shape of the Argos, the boat of the Argos. And so that boat is called, its name translates to slothful. Because it's broken in half. It's a boat that doesn't work. It's not going anywhere because it's just the stern of the ship.
That
Can you pull up the graphic?
which one was it again?
It's from a while ago. It's from a few days back, and it's got Hades from the Hercules cartoon.
Oh yeah. I didn't save that one. I'm gonna have to go back through our conversations really quick. So
Okay.
if you want to continue talking for a little bit
All
as
right.
I dig
Yeah.
that up.
So when I found out, now there's more to this, because just the definition of this noble gas, it talks about after a disease outbreak, they use this to suffocate people. And that just kind of freaks me out because of the mask ritual that we all went through. And the alleged disease outbreak that we just went through. And now here they are bringing the god of sloth onto the world stage, as though they're going to put everybody down like some kind of mass suffocation spell. The glimmers of nefariousness that I see on a regular basis around this spell are they're too much. I don't want to be an alarmist. I don't want to be the guy who's like screaming that the sky is falling. I don't want to be Chicken Little. But when the ingredients add up, it is really, it's too much to stay silent. It's too much not to talk about, when I see this kind of consistency. So yeah, you add the 1 in the 8, and you've got Argon. 18 is the moon card. Uh, and Bootes, who is in Virgo, where the Hermit card is, Bootes is called the Great Horn in Eastern cosmology, and it initiates the lunar new year. And so the moon card and the Hermit correspond to each other in a very powerful way, because it's the 9 and the 1/8, and it's the lunar new year that starts as we are going into the fall. But when I heard about the suffocating of the chickens, I instantly thought of this scene in Hercules where Pegasus blows out the hair of Hades. He blows out his hair. He suffocates the fire, and he's like, "Is my hair gone?"
What this makes me think of, and the reason why I was looking at Argon, I call it Argon because there was a fantasy novel series called Aragon, but it's spelled the same way.
Oh wow!
And it was pretty popular with my age group, and there was multiple books in the series. It was high fantasy, and in the late 2000s, they made it into a movie, and it was promised to be the next Lord of the Rings. Like that's how they were hyping it up.
Uh-huh.
The next big high fantasy movie, and it was going to be a multiple. They were going to adapt all the books. Well, they only adapted one because it performed so poorly, and it's kind of a sloth of a movie. And I
Wow.
remember I was invited to go see it in theater with a friend in school. He was like, oh, "My mom can go take us to go see the Aragon movie," because he was a really big fan of it, and I was his
Uh-huh.
friend, and I like fantasy stuff. So I was like, "Yeah, let's go see it." And as you know, as young boys, we we were kind of bored with the movie because it was so slow paced, and it didn't promise the high fantasy action of Lord of the Rings like like the books have, and like the trailers promise. So it's kind of a sloth of a movie, and that's
Oh,
what everyone was saying. And so it became known as um like a slow poor man's version of Lord of the Rings, but it's called Aragon, and it's
wow.
about a blue dragon.
Oh my gosh, dude. It's a
So
blue.
I would
Oh my
love to go
gosh.
back and revisit that movie and just revisit that series to begin with to see if there's any more Plutonian symbolism that I wasn't
Right.
aware of.
Right, dude. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. So Bootes in Eastern astrology is called the Azure Dragon. That's the Eastern name for Bootes, the Great Void. On this graphic, I want to point out that argon is used in the electric static globe, and that's like the quintessential symbol of the '80s. Is this globe? You remember Spencer's, where you would go and like,
Yeah,
get
the lightning ball.
totally.
I used to have one. Those things are cool.
Yep, totally. Um, can you maybe pull up the very last graphic I sent you today with that has MTV, because uh,
Yeah.
and it's interesting that you say like that the Blue Dragon movie, Argon, was Argon or Argos?
It's called or it's spelled Argon, but they pronounce it in the movie Aragon. So that's
Argon.
why I always pronounce it Aragon because of the movie.
Right. Well, we're talking about suffocation, so the air is gone, right? It's used for fire extinguishers too, to snuff out a fire. And so all of this is really fascinating because we're seeing the end of imperial expansionism. That's why the Smith Modernization Act, if you think of propaganda as weapons pointing out for expansion, when they did the remodernization, they turned all those weapons inward on us, and now they're pointing propaganda towards America, basically. But it is fascinating that we're going through this reset, and there's all this, yes, the spirit of sloth, the spirit of suffocation. They're putting out the fires, or expecting fires, more
And
fires.
think about people who are having to nostalgia the very sloth-like.
Right. Yes, it's going to slow them down. That's exactly right. Yes. And in fact, I myself, I have a very strong Luddite leaning, uh, meaning that I think we were better off before all this technology was dragging us into into oblivion. But I think a lot of this nostalgia spell is going to kind of herd people into that Luddite camp to be like, look, things were fine. You didn't have to fuck up the world. If it's not broken, don't try to fix it. There's going to be a lot of that sentimentality over the next decade, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the dawn of the nostalgia age was
Uh-huh.
caused by technology because we can look back on it. Because prior to it, nostalgia was all in the mind. So if you was out working in the field, that's gonna, you're not gonna be thinking about nostalgia. Only maybe at night when you're, eating your dinner or something when you're still. But when
Yes.
when you're out in the field working, you're not, you're in the moment. So now
Yeah.
that we have these devices and this digital world, we're able to sloth it up and be nostalgic for it a greater amount of the time.
Big time, buddy. Big time. Yes. Uh, so I made this one just because I was thinking about like what other iconic cultural phenomenon are just like instant nostalgia, and it's MTV. I mean, that was such a phenomenal, and I'm not dogging MTV. I'm just saying it has so much weight to it. And I'm just going to posit the theory that the MTV logo in that drawing back, that wishing for the better days, the good old days, the days of our youth, all of that is going to, I believe, bring us back to the 80s, to this convergent point between the Virgo, which is 9, the ninth month, and 8, which is Leo, the eighth month. And what's very fascinating is I've learned that there's an asterism that is a common ground, that Virgo and Leo share what's called the Great Diamond. And so this Great Diamond is mapped out here on this graphic. And I just wanted to point out how the MTV logo that everybody recognizes right away looks so much like the sigil for Virgo. This M shape with a sheet of wheat that she's carrying. Some people believe it's a fish, that she's carrying a fish also because they sacrificed fish to the volcano god on Vulcanalia, which is right. Vulcanalia happens right at the transition from the 8 to the 9, from the Leo into the Virgo. They used to take fish up and throw it in the volcano as an offering. So some people see it as wheat, some see it as the fish. Either way, it's the harvest or the fruit of your labor being given as an offering. So my ultimate theory here is that Hades, the god, is not just the number 9, is also Buotes, the great void. And Buotes, the great void, is an absence of heavenly luminaries. Now it's backdropped by stars, but in this, it's people can just look it up, the Great Void. It's the largest of all the cosmic voids. It's considerably larger than all the other ones. But I've come to discover that this is what the Fool card is all about. The Fool card is card number 0. 0 is a non-thing. It's an absence of anything. It is a void. And on the Thoth Crowley Fool card, there is the shape of Buotes on his hip. There's a negative space on the card. Buotes fits perfectly on his hip there. Same thing with the Hermit card. You can do the exact same formula, cut and paste Buotes. It fits next to the Hermit card number 9 in the Crowley Thoth deck. And right next to Buotes is this really kind of goofy crescent shape. And that is Corona Borealis. This semicircle right next to Buotes is Corona Borealis. And in some, not all, but in some Native American mythology, that is the bear den. That is the den that Ursa Major and Minor come out of in their mythology. It says the bears emerge from the stars in the constellation of Corona Borealis. And then another confirming factor that this is Hades, Pluto, Dis, and Joe Biden, who is a empty vessel. He's a vacuum of a human being. Buotes is right next to actually 3 dogs. It has Canis venatici, which is 2 hunting dogs that he is sometimes depicted with. But there is a 3rd dog just under his feet, is the Lupus, which is the great wolf constellation. So we actually have 3 dogs by this zodiacal station, all within proximity, which tells me that Buotes is a better candidate for Hades than Orion over in the springtime, which I think is the Rider-Waite Fool card, is the springtime Fool, because this one has 3 dogs, literally. The 2 dogs of Canis Venatici, which is an anagram for Vatican science, and there's the Lupus dog, which is the great wolf, just off of his heel. So I think we've actually found Hades right here in the actual month of Virgo in the fall, in the Great Void. And Hades' name is the Unseen.
That makes a lot more sense to me, that Hades would be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes way more than the springtime. And it's more pessimistic, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. It also, since we're talking about the 90s and things, it reminded me of the song "Who Let the Dogs Out," because that was in like every movie, that was on like every commercial. It was like that song was everywhere.
Wow. Good call, man. Yeah. And there's that Who. Oh my gosh, bro. There's an owl on the tail of Hydra that is not, it's actually on, it's missing from most star maps. So Who, right? And then
Yeah,
there's
they repeat it too. Who?
oh my gosh.
Who let the
Great.
dogs out?
Oh. And wasn't that in the 90s or 80s?
That was in the 90s, I believe.
Later 90s? Yeah.
And I saw this video about that song actually the other day, that no one knows who originated the song, because the Baja Man, the group that performs the song that everyone knows, is a group called the Baja Men. But they took the song that hook who
Yeah.
let the dogs out from a different song, and that person who they took it from a different song, and then that person took it from a chant from a college football team or something, and the college football team took it from some tribal chant going
Wow.
who. So it was like there was this gray area of allegedly of no one knowing who originated that hook.
Oh, wow, buddy. What the hell? So I pulled it up. The name of the owl constellation is Noctua, Noctua. And I'm never going to forget that tie-in to the Who Let the Dogs Out, because the Who just fucked everybody with lockdowns. You know what I mean? The World Health Organization,
Yeah.
which is basically like, I mean, they're totally thumbing us in the eye with this stuff, but that's anonymity. They're giving themselves anonymity. They're a non-governmental organization, and they call themselves Who? Who is they? That's the most triggering phrase they could ever say to a conspiracy oriented person is, who are they? They are the Who. Who are they? Who's on first? You know what I mean?
It's like it's like it's also reminds me of like a little kid, because like when you're a young kid, all you can do is take things in. So you're always asking questions. So you're always saying who, what, why, what's this?
Oh wow, yes. Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Uh, because that's the other part of the nostalgia spell is infantilization.
Yeah.
Perpetual infantilization is a very old spell. In the 80s was when the MTV started like making it cool for adults to be to still watch cartoons. You know, uh,
Yeah. With like
what is it?
Beavis and Butthead and all
That's it.
that.
Thank you. Yes, Beavis and Butthead. Then the
Which they
Simpsons.
just brought back.
No, really?
Yeah, they just dropped the second season of the reboot, and they dropped a movie a few months ago. It's called Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe. Well, they
Oh my.
time travel, where Beavis and Butthead from the past time travels from the present, and then there's a time loop happening.
That's freaking tragic. So the universe card in the Thoth deck is in Gemini. So two brothers in traveling through time with the universe title, and that's also in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The very last one, Endgame, where everybody came back through that portal and everybody was reunited through those portals. That's totally the world card in the Rider Waite deck. In the Thoth deck, it's the universe card. What a
Wow,
what a trip, bro.
what a trip!
If you want to pull any of the other ones up, I can rip roar through just a couple more. I don't know if there are any loose ends. We've really covered a lot.
Yeah, I think we covered most of it.
Yeah, but do can you pull up the one with I don't want to give it away, with the disease from the 80s. That one was a few days ago too. It might be in the Telegram.
Okay,
Because
I'll
there
look it
was
up.
yeah, there was a specific disease. Like all of these things. So I should say this. Like I'm really into philosophy, and I'm really into the power of free will. I'm really into the sovereignty of the individual, and I know that we have been up against people, philosophers, thinkers, who don't believe in free will. There are people who are, into what do they call them? I forget the name of the whole philosophy. Is like determinism, where they actually think that nothing you choose is going to change your destiny, and you don't have control of your fate. They don't believe in the three moira, and to the extent that they think it is their responsibility, their role that they play as world leaders, influencers, manipulators, people pulling the strings with big dollar bills. It's their job to make sure that we choose and play into the bias that they seed our consciousness with through culture. So we definitely have a very worthy foe on our hands.
Is this the one that you're talking about, or is it the other one?
It's the other one. That's a good one though too. Plato o plomo is silver or lead, and that's an ancient ultimatum. But it's the other one actually that has it's
Okay.
like more red, and so yeah, they definitely want us to believe as they believe that we don't have control of our own fate. We don't, that there is nothing new under the sun. All of these things are gigantic lies. And one of the best things we can do to kind of fight back is to do what is unexpected, to break our own pattern, to do that, to do that one whimsical thing that you've always wanted to do, but if you don't do it now, you'll never do it. Anything you can do to be in new ground or not be too comfortable with the way things are, all of that is the least expected thing that is the most likely thing to throw a wrench in the gears of these determinists who presume to be steering the will of your ship for you. So uh, I always loved, my favorite thing to do was to go camping, to just take a weekend, break my normal routines, and go camping and really challenge myself, take myself outside of the normal grind and the normal influence of those around me. Oh, no, not this one.
No, that
Uh,
one.
but that's a good one. Climate agony, climate change. Because we're in the mutable age, climate change is another thing that's is definitely uh, programming us to accept the new normal. Um, but yeah, I definitely recommend anybody and everybody, try something new. Try something new that you chose. They're telling us about the new normal, the climate change, LGB, LMNOP plus, Amazon Prime Plus. They want to be the ones who steward us into the change. But I just think there's so much we can do to be our own agent of change, because
I've
it is.
oh, so go ahead. I just found it. I
Okay,
didn't download it for some reason, and
it's
so
all good.
I had to
It's a
get
good
it.
example because we just went through an alleged pandemic. Um, uh, so in a very fascinating way, we have already rehashed some of the footsteps or some of the trauma or um, the scare, the scare techniques uh, from the 80s. And this one is just another piece of evidence that is like, I don't know, just it all stacks up to a very fascinating picture.
Okay, here we go.
And it was shepherded by the same character. Nice. Yeah, man. So it was in the 80s. If you pronounce his Hades name in Greek, it's actually there's some silent letters, like the H is silent. There's actually a W that's silent in there, but it comes out as AIDS. Even AIDS, which is which is the name of Hades, essentially the name of Hades, which is the disease from the 80s that was hailing Hades. And another ingredient to this is that it was unseen. This is an unseen enemy. And that is literally one of the epithets of Hades. He is the unseen one. He's unconcerned. He's disoriented, or yeah, he's disoriented. He doesn't care about worldly things. He just stays down in hell, and he doesn't even know what's going on. He doesn't know the politics. He doesn't know the time. He's not concerned with the things up on the surface level. And so I just put down here, this sees, because he's, all these people underneath him are those who have passed away. That's the sea of dis, is the dis seas. But now I'm starting, and now all of this, I'm not saying these guys are gods. I'm not saying these gods actually exist. in the literal sense of it. But I do want to say this. I believe that in the realm of imagination, these realities, uh, they do hold a lot of uh, structure. I'll just put it that way. There is a structure to the way we talk that reinforces in the Plato's realm of forms. We are reinforcing the truisms of the mythology of the Greeks. And a lot of how we do that is because the medical industry uses the Greek language so much. They lean on Greek linguistical truisms to the extent that when we say dis-sees, we are saying that these unseen, the people who have passed away, these germs that we can't even perceive, they are existing in the realm of ideas. And that is, ideas is another name for Hades, because ideas are unseen. And so all of these truisms, it doesn't mean that it's literal, but it means that we are reinforcing it by using our own language and playing into a realm of a conceptual realm of confirming this Greek pantheon in a very fascinating way. Now, Christians out there are going to be really pissed. They're going to be really pissed by the idea that their own language is actually giving energy and reinforcing this god of the underworld kind of thing. And I just want everybody to just, if you're a Christian and this triggers you, just say a prayer. Say a prayer. It's all good. You got the magical words. You got nothing to worry about. If you're Christian, just say the magical words. It'll be all good. You got nothing to worry about. If you're not Christian, sing a song. Do some
Yeah.
other ritual. But
And
it's fascinating how our language supports the truth of these concepts in our minds.
yeah, it also, one of the things that with the three fates, the three sisters, one of the things that um I have been guilty of a lot in the past, and I still struggle with,
Uh-huh.
is I'm an idea guy. I love thinking of ideas. I'm thinking of ideas so much that
Uh-huh.
sometimes some of it falls through
Yes.
because I'm too busy thinking of other ideas and all the different possibilities, which is focusing too much on the future. And so I have one end of it. And so one of the things that I've been um, practicing is with King of Cups, and working with um, in the community with like the with like Weaving Spiders Welcome,
Yeah.
is still looking at the future and these ideas, but bringing it into the present and actually doing it,
Right.
and
Yeah, buddy.
doing it slowly but surely, just building it up and creating it and bringing it into the physical and actually doing it.
That is absolutely what's up, man. Yes. And I'm glad you put it that way because um Jordan Peterson, he's got this rant that I really enjoy. There's so many redeeming things about him, but he's an agent. But one of his rants that I do enjoy is he says, when we have ideas, what we'll do is we'll think of 2 or even 3 potential futures, and we'll play them out in our mind, and we'll let them battle for whichever one is the superior idea or has the best potential. And then the one
Weighing
that
them
wins,
out.
yes, we weigh them out like the scales, right? And then whichever one has the most potential, is most likely, that's the one we embody and we engage with, and we give life to that idea. But the funny thing here, and this is profound, it's maybe scary for some people, but and some people it's just foolishness. But it's, regardless of where you stand with that, it's still profound philosophically, and that is that your dead ideas that you sacrifice, they don't really just disappear or stop existing. They go somewhere. They happened. They're in the past. They're still on the record somehow. And if the idea that you went with, if that falls through, you're going to go and you're going to salvage the second best idea. You're going to pull it out of Hades and you're going to resurrect it and be like, okay, I'll go with this one and try this one. So I just wanted to put that forward, that, I don't want to say cosmologically, but philosophically or even psychologically, there is a lot of substance to the value of Hades, that it is a place where ideas are, left behind, abandoned, forgotten, unwanted, but you can always go back like Orpheus and salvage one and try to bring it back to the to the land of the living, if
Yeah,
it's
I
worthy.
like that.
Yeah, man. So yeah, this is a really a profound project. His queen by his side there, her name is Eris, and she is also called Discordia. She is the lady of chaos. And it really blows my mind that Joe Biden has a vice president whose name is Harris, Kamala Harris, and we call her Camel Toe. And there's so much more to that. We don't realize, we think that we're knocking her down or we're taking a jab at her. It actually plays into the actual cosmological significance of this Eris, this god of discord, or goddess of discord, because she has a tow cable attached to her. He has to keep her on a leash, or else she will go running amok. She's chained. She's enchained. She's kept on a short leash. She is the ball and chain of Hades, literally. So there is a lot of significant consistency, even to the names that we give to these presidents. We're actually, in a strange way, we are reinforcing the archetype that they are playing out on the stage.
Wow. Wow. I did not know that about the camel toe thing. That is interesting. Wow.
It's such a trip. I often kind of marvel at, where do we get these terms that we think we're creating them, but then I find out later that it plays into the agenda in a strange way. Like, it turns out Tavistock, they gave the children of the 1960s, they gave them the word cool. And when people started saying, "Oh, that's cool, man. Yeah, cool, daddy. Oh, cool, cool." It turns out that was Tavistock seeded, and it wasn't organic at all. And then it was only within a decade, the next thing you know, all of those hippies and all that rebel movement and all the free love, they got seduced by school loans, school loans and credit cards. That's how they got all those hippies to take on the national debt and drive the ship to where we are today. So I
Oh
just think,
wow.
because going to school is cool, Daddy-O. It's cool to go in school. Isn't that a trip?
Yeah. It reminds me of how Eric Cartman on South of Pronounced School. How he's like, I want to go to school.
So far out, man. So
Yeah.
far out. So yeah,
Uh,
go ahead.
yeah. Is there any other last loose threads you wanted to maybe touch?
Uh, well, let me think. Oh, well, I will just say this. 9/11 happening in September. That's something there, without getting into all the depth of the meaning of that event, that happened on the Coptic New Year. And the Coptic cross is a equilateral cross. You know, the Coptic cross is unique. And the Coptic New Year is 9/11. And so what is significant about that is the Crux constellation is in September. That is where the Coptic cross is. And the Coptic culture historically is the slave culture, historically, back in its time. And so all of this energy going towards September, all of this veneration of this September New Year, this Coptic slave centered mentality and focus is a fascinating thing for all of this spell work to kind of culminate in September. And what I think is going to happen in terms of using nostalgia to trigger us into a fear response is the fact that if we put ourselves psychologically into the 80s and into the 90s, then we start looking around and seeing people dressing the same and the music sounds the same and our emotions literally let us travel back in time. And fashion is fostering that effect on us emotionally. And what happens is we're going to have a sense of dread and foreboding. We're going to feel like a prophetic demise is on the horizon because it was 2001 when 9/11 happened. And so the idea of this economic collapse and all of the bad things and the horrible things on the horizon, all of that is actually reinforced by the nostalgia spell, because we're going to be in this 90s mentality, in this Y2K, in the 2001 9/11 event, and the ritual that was is going to consummate, and then we're all going to feel this sense of foreboding on the horizon. And I just wanted to kind of put into context how this is probably being used functionally to play into that Tavistock web of global control, blah, blah, blah. Fuck those guys.
That's interesting because just within the past year, I've been seeing a lot in the fashion world, like in articles and things, they'll say things like Y2K 2.0, it's the new era, the next Y2K is coming or is here or is around the corner, and they're talking about the fashion, of course, and that and they're kind of saying like, oh, the 90s nostalgia is kind of is coming to an end, so now this is the next trend that will be the nostalgia of the Y2K era here. And I was saying all this as predictions for fashion and where fashion is at and where it's going and all that. But in the case of what you're saying, it has a whole nother meaning. And one of the things that just popped into my mind with this conversation is you mentioned earlier that we're not saying that these people are gods. We're not saying Biden or Trump or any of these people are gods. We're talking about these archetypes, and in the same sense, these nostalgic triggers are just different forms of archetypes. Yeah, you can say the archetypes of these gods and things, they're a bit more on at the moment on the esoteric side because not many people are aware of them.
Right.
But the nostalgic archetypes, you could say they are exoteric because everyone's aware of them, because pop culture, everyone knows about pop culture.
Right.
So maybe in the lines of what we're discussing about right now, it's kind of two halves of the same coin. You have these esoteric archetypes, but then you also have the exoteric kind of paralleling each other to kind of trigger you on both sides and get you start thinking certain things by flashing both of them at you at the same time.
Right. Yes. And that's kind of a big part of what I'm hoping to do with the project is pull these subconscious strings out of the unseen, unrecognized dimension and put them in front of people consciously so they can actually, because I think they have more power in that unseen realm. You know, the subtle informs the gross. And so if we put a name to the devil and actually call them out on that the king is wearing no clothes, then everybody realizes, holy shit, the king is wearing no clothes. Donald Trump thinks he's fucking Saturn. Biden thinks he's fucking Pluto. You know, and I myself, I actually like Tulsi Gabbard a lot. I'm kind of embarrassed how really awesome that spell has worked on me because she's Wonder Woman. She's totally Wonder Woman, and I fucking love Wonder Woman. Uh, with the lasso of truth, that she can like put the lasso on people, make them tell the truth. Oh, I just love Wonder Woman. So maybe the good news is that Tulsi Gabbard's coming on the horizon, and Wonder Woman's going to be president. There's always, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. So, but
Yeah,
I think it's important that we just kind of point out these mechanics of psychology and the inevitability, and maybe we can, hedge our own bets and acknowledge, we're in this mutable age. Nothing's going to stay the same. Everything is new. Every moment is new under the sun, and we can really up our creativity in the light of this new energy that has come since 2012.
yeah, as as that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed that book I mentioned earlier, Weaving Fate, by Aidan Watcher so much, and is because the whole point about it is like I mentioned earlier is taking control of your fate by working with these energies, with these entities, with and I think that is very powerful. And I've been doing some of the practices that he talks about and incorporating them in my own way. And I'm proud to say that I've been able to do um, certain things and kind of weave. Essentially, I've been able to weave and create things that and steer my days in the way I want them, um, more potently now than ever. And I think, to me, which is going to lead me to my final question for you,
Mhm.
that is how I'm taking back my present and not having nostalgia kind of trap me. I mean, I
Yeah.
still enjoy, um, being nostalgic because there can be power in that. Again, in moderation, if
Uh-huh.
it's balanced equally. Um, and that's what I want to leave people with is to just be able, however the way you look at it and you're able to work with it, just balance it out and gain that power back. And my last question for you, Gabe, would be, what do you want to leave people with so they're not trapped by this nostalgic war, I guess you could say, that's going on, battle.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Great question, brother. Thank you. One thing that I think is very valuable, I'm always recommending people go and, really put themselves to the test. I talked earlier about camping out, breaking away, and going into isolation or solitude, taking whatever time you can afford to have silence in your life. That I call that fasting from language. Not needing to speak and not needing to hear, so that you can actually just kind of be with yourself. Um, and then also literally fasting from food is another really good thing that everybody should do, because in that process, you literally work through residual energies that are like in your digestion. I think of it as like processing ghosts, but getting used to being hungry so that you're not a slave to your base desires and urges. These are the kind of things that are tests of will. And when you get done, you have something you own that can never be taken away. You accomplished a day without eating. You accomplished 2 days with just juice. Whatever that means for everybody. We should all put ourselves to the test on our own terms, and not let the collective be what we compare ourselves to or what we measure ourselves against. Um, and that is kind of the power of the Aquarian age. We're moving into the age of Aquarius, whatever. I'm not going to get into when that may or may not be happening, but the age of Aquarius will be the power to the individual. This is why the UFC thrived during the lockdowns, and all of the team games. One guy tests positive, they had to shut down all the games because one dude. But the UFC is mano y mano. Well, that is the very spirit of Aquarius. Sometimes Aquarius is called the naked man. And so a dude wearing Speedos wrestling another dude man on man is very indicative of the new age that we're coming into. So whatever you can do to test yourself, to be self dependent, to be your own master, is a really good way to break away from these tethers that the collective strings are going to be pulling on everybody. And the more we can all do that on our own terms, the more you're going to see the people around you admiring that and taking it onto themselves. So just lead by example in all those ways. Those are really good tools I can offer up.
Great. Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned UFC. I just saw the Gematria guy did a video about how the UFC just bought out the WWE.
Wow. Wow. Yes, man.
And
Very Aquarian.
which
It's also another part of
which is
Aquarius.
interesting because they back in what was it, the late 2000s, um, they had a whole storyline of Donald Trump taking over the WWE from Vince McMahon, and
What?
the and because my family used to watch wrestling around that time, and I remember because all I knew Donald Trump from was um, Home Alone 2 and like Back to the Future. Oh, he's the guy that kind of looks like the dude from Back to the Future, but from the future type of
Totally.
thing. And then now I'm watching him get in a fight with Vince McMahon and take over the WWE. And then years later, him becoming president, I was like, well, that's strange. And
Yeah.
now you're seeing UFC. He goes to jail within the UFC, buys out WWE. So there's a literally real life buyout that they played as their skit on their ring stage.
It's so
years
wild.
prior, it tripped me out a bit. I was like,
Yeah,
there's a lot here.
that
Yeah,
is. And even WWE is we. So it's got that collectivism going on to it, and it's acquired a lot of meaning over all the years. And now here comes the new wave of the individual, and it's more real. I hate to say that, but it is, right. UFC is more real, where it's a little more no holds barred.
yeah, yeah. It's
But
not obviously a soap opera with dudes
right.
in tights. Yeah. But thank you again, Gabe. Do you want to promote anything before we go?
Well, yeah, sure. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, my channel is the Slick Dissident on YouTube. It is the shared learning experience. Don't believe a damn word I say. Prove all my words. Test everything that I put forward for yourself. Uh, I highly encourage people to do that. Self-empower. Um, and I'm also on Rising from the Ashes. You'll catch me over there with Danunaki Dan and Indy and Morgan and our boy homie Romy. Big love to the crew. I'm on one-on-one podcast. Get down with the Weaving Spiders Webs and Interverse podcast with our boy Chance Garton. Big love to everybody.
Yeah, yes, yes. I love your guys's marvelous demystifiers. If anyone listens to me and King of Cups and dig the decoding and want more, and for some reason hasn't checked out the marvelous demystifiers, definitely check that out. That's something that will be up your alley. Thank
Nice.
you, Gabe. Thank you, everyone, for listening or watching, and see you guys next time. Much love.